Thank you, Mary, and good afternoon. What an auspicious day this is as we launch this new collaborative enterprise with respect to the humanities. The humanities certainly constitute a taproot of Wake Forest's intellectual history, and as we look to the future, it is equally important that we refresh the humanities and think how best to undertake those activities in the future. And today I can think of no one better to address that subject than our speaker. Edward L. Ayers is president of the University of Richmond. He's an award-winning historian of the American South, is known as a master teacher, a leading scholar, a pioneer in the digital humanities, and a distinguished university leader. In 2003, when he was Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences and the Kelly Professor of History at the University of Virginia, Dr. Ayers was named National Professor of the Year. He has authored and edited numerous books. The Promise of the New South, Life After Reconstruction, was a finalist for both the National Book Award and the Pulitzer Prize. In the Presence of Mine Enemies, Civil War in the Heart of America, won both the Bancroft Prize for Distinguished Writing in American History and the Beveridge Prize for the best book in English on the history of the Americas after 1492. Ed Ayers also directed the prize-winning online history project, The Valley of the Shadow, two communities in the American Civil War, and served as the founding executive director of the Virginia Center for Digital History and co-founder of the Institute for Advanced Technology in the Humanities. Since 2008, he's also co-hosted the nationally syndicated public radio call-in show, Backstory with the American History Guys, for which he serves as the 19th century guy. Ed is also a terrific university president at a school, it's a sister school, not unlike our own in its history and its mission. And I can assure you he is doing a wonderful job at making the University of Richmond an extremely good place for students to study. Finally, Ed Ayers is a nationally known advocate and spokesman for the humanities. It was my privilege to serve with him on the National Council of the Humanities a few years ago. And it is fitting that he has come here today to offer the keynote address for this symposium. His talk is titled, The Puzzle of Innovation in the Humanities. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Ed Ayers.
Thank you so much, Dave. Thank you so much. I come to you with envy and humility and excitement. Have the chance to accomplish what you folks have accomplished is something really remarkable, and it gives me pride and confidence in the future of the humanities, not only at Wake Forest, and I like sister school. Not top overlap school for competing for admissions, but rather sister school, bound with a common history. I like that very much. And I should say, in my 27 years at the University of Virginia, I grew to love Wake Forest as a fellow school that was not North Carolina or Duke. On any athletic endeavor, I was always pulling for you, and I still do. Now, I want to begin with one question. What does America want from us anyway? You know, on one hand, it's always easy to get a cheap headline with alarming trivia about the ignorance of young people today. You stop somebody at random on the sidewalk, quick, what's the Fourth Amendment? They don't know. What are they doing in history classes? We're apparently not keeping our focus on the core of our disciplines, sustaining cultural memory. On the other hand, we're patronized for not creating new knowledge the way the sciences do. We're the folks with the dog-eared volumes that we've taught so many years before, and we turn to the special passages that we like. And yet, in a startling metamorphosis, we can also be wild revolutionaries with French theory and post anything, and and who knows. Even within our own institutions, we get mixed signals. Deans and presidents, hungry for something to sell out on the hustings, want departments to be innovative and fresh and attention-getting. And it's easy for the day in and day out life-changing work in the classroom to be neglected. You folks are violating that by doing something fresh and exciting and giving Nathan something exciting to talk about out on the hustings. By and large, that is not what humanists are spending most of their energy doing. That's why I think that you are the cutting edge. And all along, the language of crisis echoes in our ears. We've either innovated ourselves out of touch with our best traditions and our central purpose, or we've not innovated enough and find ourselves left behind as even a president of the United States, commonly derided as professorial, with a liberal arts degree and a great narrative gift, talks only of jobs and of STEM disciplines. We are good at seeing irony, fortunately, because we have hit a rich vein of irony right now. Now, we're always innovating in the humanities. This is part of the puzzle. Every work of scholarship and virtually every class makes something new that wasn't there before. The joy of our work is seeing something no one has seen before, precisely because they might have looked at it for millennia and have not found the same connections, the same neural explosions that we are seeing. Without innovation, we know that the objects of our contemplation will atrophy, grow brittle, die. In daily practice, we don't really have much trouble with this. We handle this creatively, responsibly. We make things fresh. We walk away from some beloved subjects to get some new energy. We drop old projects and start new ones. And sometimes nothing is broken. You teach a class one time, it was really good, but it's even better the second time before it begins its long narrative arc into decay in the third time that you teach it. I've got fellow teachers, I can tell you know what I'm talking about. And some things, of course, never wear out, no matter how many times you teach it or how many times you talk about it. But the humanities are, or is, something that we can talk about over the next couple of days, more than the sum of individual practice, more than what each of us does each day. They have institutional embodiment, institutional costs, and institutional benefits. And it's at that scale of the humanities that strike many people as resistant to innovation, and that's what I want to talk about today. Now, being a particular type of humanist, one that's not always held in the utmost respect by other humanists, a historian, because we seem chameleon-like. We can look a little bit like social sciences if you put us in that crowd. We can kind of adapt. But there's two things that we insist upon that I cannot help but provide, which are context and narrative. I was glad to see that the young people have discovered that context is the thing that we need in narrative. So I should warn you too that I can't turn off 10 years of experience as dean and president. I've bitten the administrative apple, and I will be forced to share with you perspectives that I have unfortunately learned through that experience. So here, in the wake of the fascinating, inspiring talks we heard just now, and at the beginning of many conversations over the next day, let's take stock of just what we're talking about. I think in the interesting conversations from your wonderful students, you heard the humanities invoked in lots of different ways. For people, some people it was examining a poem for 2 weeks. Others, anthropology was the humanities. Other people talked of film. And all those things are the humanities. So how can we talk about them productively if we don't bring some sense of discipline to them? So let's try to figure out what they are. And I should tell you that this is a little history I've written myself. I was asked to read the Humanities Indicators Project, an early draft of it, in which we try to do what the sciences have done, which is measure what are we doing and how are we doing. And it had long time series. And so this is my own take on it. You may disagree. It may even seem to disconnect with common sense a little bit, but it's based on empirical research and therefore is true. I love being with fellow humanists. You can say something like that, which would be a straight line in most audiences. Everybody, whoa, yeah, empirical research. Now, the phrase the humanities bears the patina of some ancient Western tradition, if it's been handed down from the ancients, just as its creators intended. But it's an aggregation of disciplines bearing that name is really only about 100 years old, and it took form in the United States early in the 20th century. The humanities has emerged as a sort of secular glue to hold together the disparate components of a higher education system that had been assembled from pieces of the German university, from Oxbridge tutelage, and French training for civil service. How are you going to make all that into an American university? And ironically, the ingredient was the humanities. They evolved alongside the sciences and the social sciences, even newer than we are. Each new cluster of disciplines fostering, challenging, and defining the other. So the idea of the humanities grew up simultaneously with its institutional instantiation. There was not an existence of the humanities until universities called it into being. At the same time, they called into being these other new disciplinary clusters. So the machinery and the idea of the humanities have always been interwoven. Now, despite its utility, the concept grew slowly and uncertainly until the 1930s. It became established in some elite institutions from the Ivy League to Chicago to Berkeley, and there it began to anchor general education requirements. It became a sort of the things that we teach our freshmen and sophomores to acquaint them with the larger conversations of which they are a part. World War II galvanized the concept of the humanities in the U.S., demonstrating the need for humane understanding in a world descending into chaos. The ideological, institutional, demographic environment of the post-war U.S. fueled remarkable growth in universities and in the humanities departments established there. Over the 30 years after the end of World War II, the number of undergraduates in American higher education increased by 500%, and the number of graduate students 900%. The baby boom, bless her heart, produced an apparently endless supply, or these people from the 60s. The baby boom produced an apparently endless supply of students, better educated than any generation before. And 2/3 of them, /us, went to college, a larger percentage than today. So that's what we're seeing in those post-World War II generations, a kind of efflorescence of the democratic idea of the university. As the federal government focused on science and engineering in the Cold War, the humanities flourished alongside. Between 1955 and 1970, in fact, the proportion of students receiving degrees in the liberal arts rose for the first time in the 20th century. 1955-1970. Humanities departments expanded and thousands of faculty members won tenure. In 1965, the United States Congress, in something that's impossible for us to imagine now with President Lyndon Johnson, creates the National Endowment for the Humanities, with the President saying, this is essential for our nation's future. The federal government became a great patron, as it is for this organization. Bless their hearts, because what they said is they're using the power of the federal government to foster the humanities as a crucial national priority. In the years since, millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars have gone to humanists and their work. The post-war golden age that I just described, when jobs and students and raises and opportunities flowed, would henceforth stand as the benchmark against which future lives in the humanities would be measured. That's the way things were supposed to be. The number of undergraduate students taking degrees in the humanities peaked in 1972. But the humanities' relative position in the university began to deteriorate soon thereafter. A darker age for higher education began around 1975 when the draft ended, the country went into recession, the college-age population leveled out, and the economic value of a college degree began to fall. And I, with the prescience that you've asked to come here to join you today, decided, what a great time to go to graduate school in American Studies. Because even then, I had a commanding view of what was happening in the world around me.